I don't know.
We're live and you look great. Let's see.
That'll do.
Yeah. So, well, everybody, welcome. It's a privilege and an honor to talk to Bob, a good friend of the site, good friend of mine, and a living legend in the state of Florida, whether he's going to admit it or not. You know, Bob's been behind a lot of the big breweries that mess around with that wild yeast and open fermentation. And Bob's been kind of a stalwart when it comes to advice and helping these people get off the ground. And it's just great to have you right here in our backyard. So, second conversation. Thanks for being a part of it again.
Yeah, I think generally I'm the council of last resort. You can't, you know, you can't do any damage. Let's ask him, see what he says.
See, I told you he'd be modest about that. Well, in all honesty, Saint Somewhere creates, some of my favorite beers for sure. And definitely, a portfolio. You've created a portfolio of beers that people around the world have come to appreciate. And so I kind of want to go all the way back to the start of things and kind of get into your mind, when did you start Saint Somewhere? Why did you start Saint Somewhere? And I guess kind of what, if you had an idea in mind when you were starting Saint Somewhere of what you wanted it to be, what was it back then?
Well, let me go back, even a few years prior to that. I started home brewing. My wife got me a Mr. Beer kit for Christmas one year. And I always say that's like the free piece of crack from the dealer. It's like, here, kid, you'll be back. And it's a great introduction. It got me hooked, and I was fortunate enough to have a homebrew shop in town that I could just drive to and pick stuff up and ask advice and what have you. But in those days, like every other homebrew shop in the country, then they were always on the verge of closing, and eventually they did. But homebrewed for about 10 years, and this is even prior to the bottle or container size change. That really, that's the biggest thing that changed the craft beer scene in Florida. Prior to 2001, the only containers that were legal were 12 ounce, 16 ounce, 32 ounce, or a gallon or more. So that eliminated most of the imports. Anything in a 330, anything in a 750, 500 milliliter, whether it was a decent German import, Belgian, or whatever. If it was metric and it didn't come to 12 ounce, 32 ounce, you couldn't get it in Florida. And they shot that down finally. And that opened up, opened up Florida to craft beer, and that's when I, really thought, that probably wouldn't be a bad idea to open a brewery. It was like 2001, 2002. Didn't really go anywhere with it until, I kind of came to a crossroads in my career. I worked in retail forever and couldn't do that anymore. And my first choice was I approached a group of people from my homebrew club that I knew were kind of chomping at the bit to do something, and didn't know what. So I kind of threw it out there. Why don't we all get together? We'll all put in $10,000, something like that. Not a massive amount. And there's like 6 or 7 of us. Everybody can work a day or two. We're not going to get rich off of it, but it'll be fun. It'll be cool. And hell, we'll have a brewery. And they all shot me down. Yeah, it's not going to work. That's a dumb idea. You have to remember at that point, the newest brewery in Florida, prior to us, there had been a 10-year span with nothing open in Florida. And there were the only production breweries were Anheuser-Busch, Yingling, which had just, that was a Schlitz brewery, and Yingling had just moved in, and Florida Beer Company on the East Coast. It was just those three. That was it. Everybody else was a brew pub. So the idea of a production craft brewery was like just absolutely nuts. Nobody wanted anything to do with that. So after that, I just said, screw y'all, I'm going to do it anyway, and we did.
That's very Bob Sylvester of you.
Yeah.
So that happens, and then I guess you mentioned, that the lack of imports kind of made you move towards wanting to open the brewery. So I guess those imports are what influenced your original idea for what you wanted to brew, and still to this day. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It was really eye opening. When we first started seeing things like some of the Trappist beers coming in, and of course the saisons, DuPont, Fantôme. Just they all just blew me away. Prior to that, a Belgian beer would have been you could get Hoegaarden at that time, and that was, in those days, it was Hoegaarden, which was great. But that was about it. There was nothing remotely Belgian or Belgian. I don't even think Blue Moon was around yet.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been. What was the inspiration for the name Saint Somewhere?
That came from a Jimmy Buffett song. Ann and I are parrot heads from way back, and it's a line taken out of the song Boat Drinks. So it's not the title of the song, so it's legal, semi-legal to steal it and name a company after that. I thought it was like incredibly cool and original until I went to register the name with the state, and there were like 33 other businesses that were Saint Somewhere. There was Saint Somewhere Construction, Saint Somewhere Excavation, Saint Somewhere accounting, and I'm like, God damn it.
Well, it is Florida,
but you can have a bunch of companies the same names as long as they don't they're not in the same industry.
Yeah.
So we registered it and went with it. Plus it really fit with what we were going to do. I knew we were always and only going to be brewing Belgian-ish beers. So the Saint part worked well. My last name's Sylvester, but there's already a Saint Sylvestri. Plus, it sounds a little pretentious naming the brewery after yourself. And yeah, the whole package came together. The Saint Somewhere, the labels, everything based somewhat on Florida. Just kind of it all fit, and we went with it.
What I guess so you want to do Belgian-ish. What's the ish? Like what do you mean by ish? Is it that you want to do Belgian beers but fit them to Florida? I mean, or is it something else?
Yeah, at the beginning I wanted to. Again, this is the dark days of craft beer. 2006. We started with a light and a dark. So we had the Saison Athene and Lectio Divina, and those were two products out of the gate. And figured, well, we'll add a couple more down the road. And the Saison, of course, took off like there's no tomorrow and kind of left Lectio in the dust. And it was 2-3 years before we came out with Pays de Soleil. That was our third. And then, we've kind of piled on after that. But as far as Belgian, we're brewing in the Belgian tradition, but I've since kind of removed that word from our marketing and the labels, because it's we're not brewing Belgian beer. We're brewing in the style of, or in the vein of how they do it in Belgium. But in Belgium, they just call it beer.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a good point. You know, a lot of people don't think about it that way, but I guess, and I want to get into in a little bit, based on some of the questions I got before the interview about what brewing in that style means to you and how you go about achieving that. But I guess I think it'd be a good point in time to say, okay, what did Florida? We already talked about Florida beer at that point. You know, pretty barren, craft beer at least. And so, you know, the last 4 or 5 years have been pretty astronomical growth. I mean, how's it been to kind of watch that and say, well, you know, you've been doing it for a long time. How's it been that it's just like out of nowhere, just boom, it seems like this huge growth? What do you think? I mean, I guess any theory on what sparked that, and what's it been like to watch that from a brewer's perspective who's been in Florida doing it for a long time?
Well, Florida's been, you know, starving for, you know, anything new, you know, craft beer just being one of them. You know, 5 years ago when the boom first started, you know, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. You know, it's a fraternity. Let's do it. You know, 3 years ago, I'm like, yeah, it's still pretty good. Lately, you know, there's going to be a bubble. You know, that's the nasty word that you just can't say. But there's probably not going to be a bubble for brew pubs. You know, where their dominant business is on premises. You know, they'll always find a following in their neighborhood, and you know they'll have regulars. But I think it's going to get real tough in the next 3 years for a lot of the production breweries that are, you know, coming out of the gate, you know, 20 barrel, 30 barrel, up to 50 barrel. There's just not a whole lot of shelf space.
Right.
You know, people will argue that point up and down, but they haven't been out there trying to get shelf space.
Sure. Yeah. That's something I've been saying. Even so, shelf space and tap handles too. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you know, like how many bars or restaurants out there actually have, you know, 50? It's going to be probably what, 8, 12?
Yeah.
Max. And how many breweries do we have now that are fighting for those 8 to 12?
Yeah. And the days of a permanent tap handle are over. I mean, everything's one and done. You know, they'll put you on, that blows, you know, your handle comes off, another one goes on. You know, it's everybody is concerned with, you know, what's new, what's next.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, you know, what's
the same way.
What's like, you know, absent pay to play? What's the, you know, the way to keep that beer on there? I mean, you produce a consistent, great product. It should be on, but you know, like you said, there's that latest. I want the latest, greatest. Is there a way for breweries, smaller breweries like yourself or other smaller breweries in the state, craft breweries, to kind of become those mainstays at the bar?
Yeah, you just hire some muscle to go in and, you know, rough up a couple of the bar owners.
That always works.
No, it's tough. You know, especially now, there are only so many IPAs you can have on tap. You know, I've seen some of these, you know, chains mostly will have 40 and 50 taps, and you know, 12 to 13 of them are IPAs.
Right.
Which, yeah, I like IPAs. I drink IPAs, but if you're going in off the street, yeah, you're going to have 2, 3 beers. You're not going to have 12. You know, mix it up a little bit. And Florida, especially. Florida, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, the Florida beer market is still very young compared to any of the big cities, you know, Philadelphia, or any of the big markets like Philadelphia, Chicago, New York. You know, they've been getting craft beer for, you know, since before there was craft beer.
Sure.
They're experiencing a boom, but the market's a little more mature. I'm not going to be real excited about Florida until somebody releases a Kolsch and it's a big deal. Everybody's excited about it. Right now, everything has to be, peanut butter, maple, kiwi, coconut, quad porter, kettle soured. If you're not making that, then you're in trouble. And it's a young market.
So that's not your next beer then?
Yeah, no. Jokingly, I always say, well, it's a young market. What do kids like? Kids like candy. They're eating candy now. Eventually, they'll mature and they'll find out that they really like caviar.
That's one thing. As you travel and you drink beer in different places, you notice that the more established markets are, the beer drinker is drinking really well-made lagers, for example, straightforward lagers, saisons, a nice pale ale. It's not like these crazy things. I mean, Florida, I feel like, has built kind of a niche on that. I don't know. I just don't know if that's a good or a bad thing long term. But for now, it seems to be.
Yeah. I don't think it'll be long term because we have taste will mature. For a lack of any other word.
Have you noticed? I mean, I think I've noticed a little bit that we have a young palate, but I have seen this kind of quick evolution in the palate. Maybe that's the word, but their search for beers that are like saison, for example, is a style that's really becoming popular. A lot of breweries down here, at least in South Florida, are making sure that they brew saison.
Becoming popular.
The word is becoming popular, and I'm happy you said that because I saw a post. I think it was on Facebook or something a few weeks ago, where you put a post up about like something about saison and the style, and what I guess it's one of those beers that gets kind of fit into a farmhouse style a lot of times also. So I guess what does saison mean to Bob Sylvester?
It's about everything from the water to the container that you put the finished product in. At least from what I can see, there are breweries out there that think that I could just use anything, ferment it with a saison yeast, and boom, you got a saison. Well, that makes as much sense as brewing anything and using an Irish ale yeast and saying, I have an Irish dry stout. There's much more to it.
Sure.
It's the water, it's the process, it's the ingredients, it's everything.
Right. So, on that vein, I said it earlier. I want to talk a little bit about kind of the process. I think saison would be a great way to talk about that. Water quality is something that I've noticed a lot of brewers a lot of the newer brewers don't pay that much attention to. But it could be probably the most. Beer is mostly water. I guess, what are you looking for in a saison? You're looking at what kind of pH level, what kind of what are you looking for in water when you're brewing a saison, and then kind of what would you consider maybe like the grains that you should see in a saison so it's a saison, and then I guess does that translate into a certain range of alcohol content or certain final gravity, or, certain dryness, tartness, carbonation, things like that.
All the above.
Yeah, it's an open question, but I guess my question is, when you go brew a saison, what are you looking for in your water? What are you trying to achieve? Because I know some people contacted me to see, they want to hear what your process is.
I'm a big proponent of using what you have, and that goes to the heart of farmhouse ales. They weren't pumping the water in from 2 towns over. They also weren't throwing in brewing salts into the water. They may have adjusted it somehow or come up with some way to adjust it, but unless your water is like way out of whack, or just loaded with chloramine, I built particulate filter and activated charcoal filter just to get the chlorine out. The water in Tarpon was pretty good. It was a little calcium heavy, a little hard, but that just changed in December. In the city of Tarpon Springs, the water is now it's now all RO water. So it's pretty much the best water you can get, and they strip it and then they correct it, and the softness is much better. On that note, that was kind of an eye-opening thing to me when I traveled to Belgium and went to and brewed with a handful of the farmhouse breweries. They use soft water. They soften the water. That's something that kind of is unheard of here, because for years, going back to the joy of homebrew, you wanted a certain amount of hardness for your hop perception. The British beers, that was all pretty high calcium, pretty hard water to get the hoppiness. You brew an IPA, you want fairly hard water. You want a lot of minerals in there for the hop perception. And I believe that to be true for a while, up until 2-3 years ago, when I had that epiphany, and I'm like, that makes perfect sense. And there was just this elusive little thing missing from my beer and pretty much every other American-made saison that I've had. It wasn't anything big, but it was just a little aspect that was missing, and what it was the difference in the water. I mean, I immediately saw a difference when Tarpon Springs switched over to RO water, and the hardness is 1/3 of what it was before.
Mm-hmm. That'll do it.
Yeah,
that'll do it. So then, what about certain kind of grain bills for saisons? Is there something that somebody wants to brew a saison at home, or that they should kind of stick to? Is there that would be more along the lines? I mean, I'm trying to more define the style classically, right? I mean, there's
very, very simple. If the yeast I use is so drastically attenuative that I have to add a little bit of wheat and a little bit of rye just to get some body and head retention. But other than that, it's straight, Pilsner malt, which is, traditional Belgian farmhouse ale malt, just a real light, about the lightest malt they could get. I've tried pale malt, came out a little too sweet. Just that little teeny tiny amount of unfermentable sugar in there just didn't help it. Right. So, Pilsner malt, you could use spelt and, all kinds of crazy, heirloom stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. But again, if you want to be authentic, every single beer used to be sour. All beers used to be smoky because they kiln the malt over fire. Mm. And they were all dark. So, it depends on how authentic, how ancient you want to be.
Right.
I hear that a lot. Oh, saisons are meant to be sour. Well, no, they were sour. They didn't want them to be sour. They just didn't understand how to get rid of that. That was an off flavor. A little wild yeast, a little tart is fine. But if it's sour, then I would have to say, no, that's not a saison. That's something else.
Sure. what's the, so you said your yeast is very, I guess for lack of a better term, aggressive.
Yeah.
I think I read that you were using that Saison DuPont strain.
Yeah. That in conjunction with open fermentation.
Right.
So, you get a combination of wild yeast from the air and the DuPont strain, which a lot of breweries are afraid of the DuPont strain because it has a history of stalling.
Right.
Which it does. And it stalls just for a couple of days and then it picks right back up. My theory is that it was originally a mixed strain, or red wine strain is what the folks at DuPont said years way back. So you have one of the strains crapping out and it morphs a little bit, and then another one kicks in, and that's the secondary. But after 2-3 generations, that goes away, and it just ferments like everything else, only probably even a little faster.
Yeah, I mean, I use that strain a lot when I brew at home. I brew saisons at home, and I find that you've got to keep the temperature super high. Do you pitch at a high temperature? Do you pitch that yeast at a high temperature? Do you ferment at a high temperature? I used to preach
85, 90 degrees. Now I cap everything at 78. That's as high as I let it go.
Any reason for that?
Yeah, especially with the open fermentation. If you go much higher than 78 or 80, at least in my experience and in my brew house, start making a lot of acetone and just real off stuff that you just don't want.
Sure.
But it's a combination of the yeast, the wild yeast, and open fermentation and just the dynamics in my fermenters. Some breweries get away with the 90-degree thing, and it works out perfectly fine. But they're in a conical.
Right. Yeah, you're open. It's a big difference. Yeah. How do you mean? A lot of people are also scared to do open fermentation in a place like Florida because it's so hot. Like you were just saying, the heat can cause some of these. So I mean, you keep it at 78, it makes sense. I guess that gets around, for the most part, getting any of those bugs and things you don't want in there, icky off flavors you don't want in there.
Yeah, and ideally, my house strain is going to be the dominant strain, and then the wild whatever else is coming in is definitely going to be secondary. And the best part of that is I get free Brettanomyces.
Yeah, exactly. Saving money there.
Yeah.
What's your favorite style to brew now? What was it when you first started? And then I guess along those lines, what's been your favorite beer that you've produced at St. Somewhere and why?
Probably my favorite one to brew is Surge, which I haven't brewed that in a while. Surge,
That's
for anybody not familiar, it's an homage to Surge Storms, which is a Tim Dorsey character. Tim Dorsey's a Florida writer, and Surge is kind of a Dexter character. He kills bad people in all kinds of strange ways. With that said, Tim's coming out with a new book the end of the month, and we're putting Surge back into circulation for the book release. So look for Surge in about a month.
I'm very happy to hear that, and I have seen a couple bottles in the back of shelves behind some of your newer stuff that's come out. I'm not going to tell people where because I'm going to go buy them. But Surge is probably my favorite beer that you've produced. I know that you've poured me other beers. You've said this is quintessential St. Somewhere.
Yeah.
I believe it was Cynthiana, if I'm not mistaken. What makes it quintessential St. Somewhere?
Well, Cynthiana. Cynthiana is probably my shining star, my favorite out of the bunch, because it's Florida. The Cynthiana grapes are grown here in Florida, and they're an heirloom variety. They're thought to be. They're also called Norton grapes. They're thought to be the original North American red grape from which other North American varieties were bred off of. So it's been around forever, at least in North America. And the fact that it grows in Florida and it's not a muscadine grape.
Sure.
And I just love the interplay of the grapes and the malt.
I really love that too. I mean, it makes it real subtle. What I like about the grapes is that it's just like a subtle flavor there. It's not an overpowering. That's one thing. I was talking to another brewer that I don't know if Matt Manthe brews at Odd Brew.
Oh yeah, I know Matt.
So Matt told me one day, he goes, when I brew a beer with blueberries, I'm not brewing a blueberry beer. I'm brewing a beer that's accentuated by blueberries. And then I think that's kind of what Cynthiana is, a beer accentuated by grapes, and the grapes allow you to do that. I think it's just a really beautiful, like a crisp, soft flavor there, but it's there and it's nice, and it's got that kind of Saint Somewhere feel to it in the background too. I mean, it's a phenomenal beer.
Yeah, and you shouldn't somebody that didn't know should not be able to drink it and say, oh yeah, it's beer, fermented with grapes. Back to what Matt said. You shouldn't pick it up and go, oh man, that's made with blueberries. After somebody gives you that suggestion, you should be able to, oh yeah, I can kind of pick out the blueberries. Yeah, they should be subtle in the background, not punching you in the face.
What about when you first started? We kind of talked about it, Belgian-ish, but was there like an emphasis that you wanted to? I guess did you want people, when they saw a label or a Saint Somewhere tap handle or came to the brewery, was there like a takeaway? I guess for lack of a better term, concept or theme that you wanted people to think about your brewery? Was there like a, I want to be known for X,
just, and I still do, just authenticity, if it says, it's a Saison, I strive to make as authentic article as I can. And anything that's suggested on our labels, it's the real thing. If it says, with oranges, it was brewed with oranges. Coffee bean, it was brewed with coffee bean, but we don't use, anything not genuine. So,
sure.
And the whole ephemeral, old school Florida feel, that you get from the labels, that is Saint Somewhere, if that makes any sense.
No, it does, and I guess I love to hear that, because it's your personality transcending into your beer, which is what I love. It's you're authentic. I mean, anything that you write or I read or I hear, you're telling people what it is. At least what it is according to Bob, right? And so that's awesome, because it's it's not a what's gonna sell according to everybody else. It's a what it is according to Bob, and I love that, and I love authenticity. And you know what? A lot of other brewers around the country now are starting this. Whether it's Jeff over at Jester King, Corey at Side Project, they're doing this in this terroir kind of thing, right? And it's like Jeff wants to be inherently Austin Hill Country, and so. Yeah. But that's something Saint Somewhere has been doing for such a long time now, and inherently Florida. Florida ingredients and Florida, microorganisms that you're catching in open fermentation. And I think it's beautiful. And so I guess What was it like the first time you saw one of your beer bottles at a store? This is another question I got. The first time you walked to the store and saw your label sitting there on a shelf.
Pretty fantastic. For a while, we had a little launch issue. The first batch we sent out, I really under or overestimated the cork. Even talked to the bottle manufacturer and the cork manufacturer. They're like, oh yeah, this is it. This is the cork you need. There was nobody in the industry I could talk to ask, oh, what size cork and cake. Nobody was doing that.
Sure.
Certainly not on a regular basis.
Right.
So I trusted the bottle company, and we bottled, and couldn't get the corks out.
Okay.
I mean, no matter what you did. So you had to take the bottle, take the cage off, cut it with a knife, and at the top of the bottle, and then use a corkscrew. I had to trade out a few cases, and we finally got over that. And then after that, it was fine. It was cool. And at the beginning, we did zero draft. I didn't do draft for probably 4 years. It was all the bottles.
I think bottle conditioning adds something to it, right? I mean,
oh yeah, yeah. It's
I feel like it adds a little more to the authenticity too.
And it just adds to the beer. A bottle conditioned beer, in other words, re-fermented in the bottle, will, I don't want to say improve. It'll change. Some of them improve. The darker ones actually do get markedly better with age. The lighter ones will get different, but still good with age, as opposed to a filtered and pasteurized beer starts to degrade the second it's packaged. So it's never any better than that day.
Right.
The bottle conditioning, and we keg condition everything too. I would never get away from that.
Are you gonna? Okay, so you keg condition too. Okay, that's pretty awesome. That's not a lot of people doing that.
No, and that took me. That took quite a few years to nail down. And I get a lot of emails and phone calls about how you achieve that on a regular basis.
Is it another thing that I'm kind of going to be tackling in an article I'm going to write is kind of serving at craft beer bars and restaurants, proper serving of beers. When you're keg conditioning a beer when it goes out to a restaurant or a bar, is there extra things that these people are going to have to be doing? Maybe shaking it around so also the yeast and cake on the bottom. Is there an extra protocol that you kind of inform these people serving?
Yeah, I started putting a little sticker on the on the cap, on the coupler cap. This product is re-fermented in the keg. You're going to have some yeast settling to the bottom. Please refrigerate for minimum 24 hours before tapping. Mm-hmm. If you don't, if it comes off the truck, it's getting banged around. There's some sediment, and the sediment goes back into suspension, and you're going to pour, kind of a yeasty, cloudy beer. Right. But if you just, unload it, let it sit a day, and without banging it around, you tap it, the beer's going to pour nice and bright.
Pretty awesome. Something else is pretty awesome. You're opening up a really cool new tap room.
Yes.
Let's go into that a little bit because that's awesome. I can't wait to get out there. Kind of again inspired European inspiration, right? There's going to be a hotel kind of attached or a bed and breakfast concept attached to the brewery.
Well, for the tap room, we bought 2 pieces of property that are on 2 different streets, but they meet in the back. They're perpendicular. The main property is it's an old house built in 1912 with a cool big wraparound porch, and that is going to be the tasting room on the bottom floor, and the top floor is going to have guest rooms that we're going to rent out. We're not going to pursue it a whole lot. We might put it on like Airbnb, but if you know about it, you know about it. We could sleep. There are 2 separate rooms plus a kind of a main living room. That we'll put a couple of fold-out couches there, plus the 2 bedrooms. We could sleep up to 8, and it has its own entrance and exit, so you can come and go as you please without having to go through the tasting room. It's very, very old school. The house is really cool. It's got a fireplace, just this real nice mahogany staircase in it. I think people are going to be pretty pleased when they see it. And even the bar, we bought a antique bar from France from the 1930s, very kind of Art Nouveau look to it.
Cool.
Real cool. The staff is going to be uniformed. Not your average, just brewery tap room. And we're going to follow, strict hardcore Belgian protocol.
Nice.
Pouring the beer.
Awesome.
Taps are all going to be on the bar facing the customer. The bottle protocol, the draft protocol is all going to be, it's going to be mostly about the beer, but it's also going to be about, the presentation and the cool part.
That to me can be almost just as important. And,
nobody's doing that.
Yeah. I mean, the whole experience around beer, sometimes, maybe the experience makes the beer for someone, like they remember that Saint Somewhere beer they had, poured properly, treated with respect, somebody uniformed. I mean, that's going to add so much to the experience, so much to the brewery, I think. I mean, and we've talked about that too. Another brewery likes to do is Wicked Weed. They do it from the labels all the way to the tap room, and they're really into that. And I'm awesome. That's awesome to hear that we're going to be able to experience that to the 10th degree at Saint Somewhere.
We're going to make it as pretentious and ostentatious as possible.
People are going to be wearing tuxes into the brewery tap room.
But it's fun. You go into a high-end cocktail bar and you get the show. Rather than somebody turning their back to you, just pulling a draft and turning around and sitting it on the bar.
Right.
Which is fine. We just want to step it up and just give people an experience they're really not going to get anywhere else.
No, it sounds like it. And the best part about it is when you have like 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, you can just kind of crawl your way up to your room and stay the night. So the other property is going to be the brewery, I'm assuming, the perpendicular.
Right.
Is it going to be the same brew house you're brewing on now, or are you going to
I'm afraid to change much, to be honest. I'm pretty happy with what we have now, even though it's as rudimentary as you could possibly get. But it works well. I've added, or we've stepped up a little bit in anticipation of that. Got a couple new tanks, and to everyone's surprise, I got a pneumatic corker and a wire cage twister. Make them a little more uniform. Because for people that don't know, I have a volunteer army of about 300 people deep, and for bottling, I'll send out an email and take the first 8 to 10 people that reply, and up until the last time we bottled, everything was done literally by hand. Just the floor corkers. The cages were put on with a wire drill with a hook on the end.
Yeah.
The bottle rinsers I bought, they don't even make them anymore, from a old homebrew supply store that was online that's since gone. Just you push down, it squirts in the bottle. I don't know what I'm going to do if those ever break. But bottling's a whole nother. That's a whole nother event. We make an event out of it because it's fun. People love coming out, and takes about 2.5 hours to fill 1,000 bottles. And we feed you lunch, open bar after. You pour your own, and then you leave with 6 bottles. It's a good day.
Yeah, it's a pretty good day.
Yeah.
It's a good experience, just to even do that. It's got to be cool to see that in action. So you're upping the speed of bottling now. I know bottling is a whole other issue.
Well,
I'm sure
it didn't make us any faster, but everything is so much more consistent.
Okay, all right.
I didn't realize how consistent it was until I opened a case that we hand bottled, and then opened a case with the corker and the cager. And I mean, they're all perfect. Everything's level, everything's lined up. And the other case was not. The opposite. They looked more hand done, but I'd rather have a little more consistency.
That's consistency, proper treatment of the product. I have a friend of mine who's going to be is in the process of starting a brewery down here, and he's really concerned about that once it leaves his hands, right? I mean, meaning people storing these beers, these bottle conditioned beers, in improper temperatures. I mean, they're not going to deal with that at the tap room. It's going to be dealt with properly.
Yeah.
Do you pay much attention? I mean, how much does that keep you up at night, that people might be serving your beer at a completely, 15 degrees off when it should be served?
I don't, for a couple of reasons. The bottles are pretty resilient. They're anything bottle conditioned or keg conditioned has a much larger range of cold and heat that it can withstand without screwing it up. The draft, I have faith that any of the bars that are buying Saint somewhere, know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Frankly, somebody that, Bud Miller Coors place is not going to put our stuff on unless they ordered it by accident. It's going to
I would love to walk in somewhere. I can't wait to walk in somewhere and see a Bud Light handle and a Saint somewhere right next to each other.
I mean, I'm all for it.
Yeah, why not, right? It's going to draw some attention, being there. So when can we expect it to be able to go to this tap room and enjoy a beer in the tap room?
It keeps getting pushed back.
Yeah, everything always does, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, we jumped the last major hurdle on Monday, which was getting past the Heritage Preservation Board. Yeah, anytime you do anything to an old house, that it's within the historic district. If you change a screw in the thing, you have to get approval, and we finally got approval for that. So now construction can actually start.
Right.
We closed on the properties in September, so nothing. We had the place termite tented, and that's all that's happened since then. It's all been waiting and bureaucracy and filling out forms and getting things approved, and so at this point we're probably seeing April sometime. None of the construction is major,
right?
But it's just going to take a while.
It's construction, and there's always a hang up.
Yeah.
Awesome. What is there going to be? I guess now there's going to be like a kind of a tap room to go to. Are you going to be trying to do more variant beers for the tap room, or is it going to be pretty consistent what we've come to know from Saint Somewhere? I guess a little bit about that.
I'm going to have several tap room exclusives. This is also going to give us the ability to do, to sell out of the tap room. So beer that normally I would have sent to into distribution, we'll hold back. We're not going to make a big deal and, it's a 2-bottle limit and all that stuff. If you want it, it's available. You buy it. I was really hoping we'd farther along at this point because I've got a handful of collaborations that we're bottling in the next week to 10 days that are really would have been great to hold back and sell at the brewery. One's a collaboration we did with Jester King.
I remember that. You're talking about that.
Yeah. The other one is I call it the Farmhouse from Hell, but we called it Fraternity. And I brewed that with, 3 of my absolute heroes, Daniel Thierry from Brasserie Thierry, Yvonne Debates from De La Seine, and Pierre Alex and his son, Kevin Carlier from Blagiche.
Yeah.
So those would have been good beers to just sell at the invitation.
Yeah, man.
They're going out on the market, so everybody can enjoy them. Hopefully.
Oh man, yeah. Hopefully, I can get my hands on some. That's gonna be awesome. Is it? So that's gonna be awesome. I mean, that's cool. That's really cool. So we can shoot for maybe a little later this year, which is great to hear. Absent any hangups. This is kind of a more broad question. I think to close it out, I kind of want to get your the world according to Bob opinion on, if you could see Florida beers being so young, being kind of like the guy who's been here doing it. If you could see Florida beer go one way in the next 5-10 years, I guess what would you want to see? What should Florida, maybe not even stylistically, but what should it aspire to do? I mean, what should we? This might be like a real broad question. Have you given any thought to that?
Yeah, they just need to calm the hell down. In every aspect. You don't have to have a beer with 47 different ingredients. You don't have to have beer where people are lining up at 3 a.m. to get a hold of it. Yeah. But, I do think there will be a little fallout in the next 3 to 5 years. It's just inevitable. We're already seeing a little bit of it because we did lose. We lost a couple of breweries.
Right.
Nobody ever mentions that, but we've had a few closings in the state. The ones that are going to be successful are the kind of 2 branches. One branch is the ones that are a little larger and they're established in the grocery stores, and they'll have a couple of permanent tap handles in World of Beer. The bigger breweries, let's say. And I think the other direction is going to be the more the brew pub type thing. Your neighborhood, you're not really distributing, and if you are, it's kind of in your area, your neighborhood. They're going to survive. It's the guys in the middle that are going to really have a tough time.
Yeah, the mid-range distribution, right? Brewery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's still such a young culture, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before we went on, but a lot of other big beer towns, Portland, Oregon, Asheville, North Carolina. There's breweries in every corner, but they're not. I don't think they're necessarily focused on becoming the next crazy thing. It's more of let's brew like really consistent, well-made beers, and people.
Yeah.
And we'll have our niche. Saint Somewhere has its niche, where you want a beer like that, where to go. And that's kind of the approach, I guess, what you're getting at, right? Just brew a damn good beer.
Yeah. It's beer. Your life isn't going to change. Last year, for Swansea Day.
Yeah.
It's been at red light for past couple of years, and it's a great event. Ton of people show up, lining up. There's tickets, to get a little sample of Swansea. I was there, and a buddy of mine was at Apex in Portland for Swansea.
Right.
So, I texted him. I'm like, man, it's crazy here. How are things there? And he's like, he sends me a picture. There's nobody in the bar. If you want the Swansea or any of the Cantillons, you just go up and ask, and the bartender pours it. It's was no big.
Is that a good or a bad thing?
I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking.
He said they did sell out of it by the time he left, but he was there. He got there at like 7 p.m. and by like 9 or 10 it sold out.
Right.
But they started pouring it at 1.
That's awesome.
It was 1 keg.
Yeah, that's
so there. There wasn't that. Got to be first in line, and
Yeah, we'll evolve. I think we'll grow into that kind of thing, and maybe there'll be another bar in the state that might be able to have Swansea Day kind of festivities. Hopefully, but I see what you mean. I think it's going to be huge. I mean, again, like another beer that you look around and it's everywhere, and it's like a Pivo Pils type of thing. It's just a straightforward beer, but in these kind of more mature markets that you're talking about, it's a beer that if it's on tap, everyone goes for.
Yeah, and it's doing well. People are excited to see it.
What can we expect from St. Somewhere in the next 3 months, beer-wise? Anything that's going to be coming out?
The 2 collaborations I talked about. Surge.
I can't wait.
Reemergence of Surge.
Cannot wait.
And we also did another I don't really call it a collaboration, but we collaborated for the label with Christopher Still, who is in Tarpon Springs, right near the brewery. Anybody who's been through Tampa International Airport or the Capitol building in Tallahassee has seen his murals. He paints these beautiful, fantastic murals that depict mostly a lot of Florida history. He paints in the kind of the old master style, and sells some of his paintings for $200,000. We've been in contact with him almost since day one, and he agreed to let us use one of his paintings for the label. So that is going to be our first beer to guard, let's say. And the label on that's fantastic. And the story on the back is about Christopher Still and what he does, and a little bit about the beer. I'm really just as excited about that one as the other 2.
Awesome. Yeah, that marriage of art and beer is going to have to come together. That's just going to glue it all together. That marriage of culinary world, art, and beer, I think, has to be unified into one. And I'm happy that St. Somewhere has been doing it and will continue to do it. So that's awesome to hear.
Thanks.
Well, this has been awesome. I'm going to let you go. It's already like 8:15 on a Tuesday or Wednesday. But thank you for sitting down with us again. It's an honor for me to be here with you. Again, like I said that before, because I really value breweries like yourself that are, again, you're sticking to authenticity. And authenticity means being you, and that your personality comes through in your beer, and you're true to what you envision for the brewery. And I think that's, in a day like today, where this, like you said, we're potentially one day on a verge of a bubble. Who knows when that might be? It's so important to have breweries like yourself leading the way and being themselves for the sake of being themselves. And so, any parting words?
Yeah, drink up. And again, April or so, keep an eye out for the grand opening. Should be fun.
It's gonna be awesome. Is it gonna be a big party?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All
We'll
right.
try to spread it over, at least a weekend.
All right.
We're known for our epic, occupies.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get
Awesome.
out of hand. They're fun.
Awesome. Can't wait for that. So, without anything further, good night, my friend. I will see you soon up in Tampa.
All right.
Springs and
Maybe Jupiter.
yeah, or in Jupiter. That's right. Go see Bob in Jupiter in a couple weeks.
The last weekend of the month, like 29th, 30th. Yeah.
Go see Bob. So, I will see you, buddy.
All right, man. Good talking.